have to say it was Thomas Crown Affair. It really was. That there was such an alchemy to that film that we got away with. We didn't socialize or anything like that.
At 72 years old, Pierce Brosnan has finally pulled back the curtain on a secret he's carried for decades. The man who embodied James Bond, the suave, unshakable spy adored worldwide, admits that not every co-star made his life easy. In fact, there were 7 actors who left such a mark on him, he couldn't stay silent any longer. Behind the tuxedo, behind the martinis and smooth one-liners, Brosnan was quietly keeping score. The tension wasn't always loud. Sometimes it was an aside, a cutting remark, or the heavy silence between takes. Other times it boiled over into frustration so sharp, the crew whispered about it for weeks. These weren't just creative disagreements. They were moments that tested his patience, rattled his confidence, and forced him to confront actors whose styles clashed violently with his own. From an Oscar-winning star who stole his spotlight, to a method actor who dragged out every scene, to a legendary icon who made him doubt if he even belonged. Brosnan's list of feuds will shock you. And the names? Some are Hollywood legends. Some are surprising newcomers. And one of them is a beloved comedy genius no one would expect Pierce Brosnan to struggle with. So why did Bond himself, the cool-headed secret agent, quietly resent these people? And how did those clashes shape not only his career, but the very films we still remember today? Stay tuned, because we're diving deep into the 7 actors Pierce Brosnan admits he could barely stand. But first, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. You won't want to miss what's coming next. When Die Another Day premiered in 2002, it was supposed to be Pierce Brosnan's triumphant 4th outing as James Bond. He had revived the franchise with GoldenEye, carried it through the late 90s, and was cemented as the face of 007. But when Halle joined the cast, fresh off her groundbreaking Oscar win for Monsters Ball, the balance of power on set shifted dramatically. Suddenly, the spotlight wasn't on Bond anymore. It was on Barry. Her role as NSA agent Jinx Johnson wasn't just another Bond girl part. It was a cultural event. Paparazzi followed her every move. Media swarmed the production, and fans demanded interviews. And while Brosnan remained the consummate professional, insiders say the shift hit him hard. For years, he had been the singular star at the center of the Bond universe. Now, he was sharing that universe with someone whose fame threatened to eclipse his own. Crew members recall Brosnan standing in full tuxedo, waiting under hot lights while filming was delayed, because Barry's team was negotiating a press deal or retouching makeup for yet another photo call. In one telling moment, he sighed deeply before muttering, "It's the Bond film, not a Barry film." That single line captured his frustration. It wasn't hatred. Brosnan respected Barry's talent, but their working styles clashed. She thrived on spontaneity and playfulness. He was methodical and controlled. The chemistry on screen sizzled, but behind the scenes, Brosnan felt increasingly overshadowed. For him, Die Another Day was bittersweet. The film made over $430 million worldwide, but it marked a turning point. Bond was no longer just his franchise. And for Brosnan, that realization stung. But Halle wasn't the only one. Another co-star pushed Pierce's patience even further, and it started with his very first Bond film. When GoldenEye hit theaters in 1995, it wasn't just another Bond film. It was the rebirth of the franchise. After a 6-year hiatus, the pressure was immense, and all eyes were on Pierce Brosnan to modernize the iconic spy. He delivered, but behind the camera, another story was unfolding. His uneasy working relationship with co-star Sean Bean. Bean played Alec Trevelyan, the MI6 agent turned traitor, and audiences praised his performance as one of the most compelling Bond villains ever. But that brilliance came at a price. Known for his method acting, Bean carried the weight of his character everywhere, on set, off set, in rehearsals, even in downtime. His dark, brooding energy mirrored his role so intensely that it often made the atmosphere around him heavy. Brosnan, by contrast, thrived on rhythm, timing, and a balance of preparation and charm. He valued efficiency, a clean process, and a sense of camaraderie on set. Bean's intensity disrupted that. Scenes stretched longer than needed. Rehearsals dragged on. Reshoots became routine. Crew members often saw Brosnan step off set, rubbing his temples, waiting for Bean to finish dissecting a line. At one point, he was overheard muttering, "It's a Bond film, not Shakespeare." Their interactions were never explosive. There were no shouting matches or public confrontations. Instead, the tension simmered beneath the surface, quiet, restrained, but undeniably there. Off camera, they rarely socialized. The bond Brosnan often forged with other co-stars simply never materialized with Bean. Ironically, that distance may have made the film stronger. Their on-screen rivalry crackled with real tension, giving their betrayals a sharp edge that audiences felt. But for Brosnan, GoldenEye was more than his debut as Bond. It was a test of patience, one that left him quietly drained. And if Sean Bean's intensity was exhausting, imagine stepping onto a set with an actor so legendary. She made Brosnan question his own talent. By the time Mamma Mia began filming in 2008, Pierce Brosnan had already lived through a lifetime of tuxedos, stunts, and secret agent cool. Trading shaken martinis for ABBA songs and Greek sunsets was a bold move, but nothing unnerved him more than seeing one name on the call sheet, Meryl Streep. Streep was already a legend, with Oscars, critical acclaim, and the kind of reputation that made every actor raise their game. Brosnan admired her deeply, but admiration can be a double-edged sword. Sharing scenes with her didn't just inspire him, it unsettled him. Crew members recalled how Brosnan, usually confident and composed, began second-guessing himself. He would rehearse lines quietly off to the side, stealing glances at Streep as if trying to study her rhythms. In one candid moment, he joked nervously, "When you're next to Meryl, you realize how much further you've got to climb." But behind the smile was real pressure. The musical element made things even tougher. Brosnan was far outside his comfort zone, singing live, often next to Streep, whose natural ease only highlighted his struggles. His untrained vocals would later be criticized by fans and critics alike, some in good humor, others harsh. But what most people didn't see was the courage it took to even attempt it, knowing he'd be compared to one of the greatest performers of all time. For Brosnan, it wasn't resentment. He respected Streep too much for that. The tension came from within, from the self-doubt she unintentionally triggered. Next to her, his usual charm and presence felt small, almost inadequate. Yet, instead of retreating, he pressed on. He didn't let insecurity derail him, though the pressure left its mark. In the end, their chemistry worked. Audiences saw warmth, romance, and playful charm. But Brosnan walked away with something different. A reminder that even icons feel dwarfed when standing beside greatness. And if Streep made him doubt himself, his next co-star frustrated him in an entirely different way, by slowing everything down. On paper, Pierce Brosnan and Colin Firth look like the perfect duo. Two respected British actors, each with leading man charm and decades of experience, joining forces in the sunny, feel-good world of Mamma Mia. But behind the Greek island smiles and ABBA sing-alongs, their working styles couldn't have been further apart. Firth was meticulous, cerebral, and endlessly analytical. He dissected scenes the way a surgeon dissects an organ, carefully, methodically, leaving no detail unchecked. Every comedic beat, every gesture, every pause was carefully considered. For him, even a light-hearted musical demanded Shakespeare-level precision. Brosnan, on the other hand, thrived on instinct. After years of playing action heroes and romantic leads, he trusted his gut. He valued presence, rhythm, and spontaneity. To him, overthinking killed the magic. So when Firth pushed for endless run-throughs or debated the subtle meaning of a comedic line, Brosnan's patience wore thin. One moment still circulates among crew members. During a group rehearsal, Firth insisted on fine-tuning the timing of a joke. Brosnan, with his trademark dry humor, quipped, "Let's not overthink it. We've all got a song to sing," delivered with a smile, but everyone knew it wasn't entirely a joke. Their differences never escalated into a blow-up. Both were too professional for that, but the distance was clear. Brosnan, sociable and relaxed, bonded with the rest of the cast over drinks and stories. Firth often kept to himself, preferring quiet evenings. It wasn't hostility, just two temperaments that didn't mesh. Ironically, their creative friction may have been a gift. On screen, Brosnan's instinctive looseness and Firth's careful precision balanced each other, creating a natural push and pull that audiences loved. Still, for Brosnan, it was a reminder. Even when you respect someone, clashing philosophies can quietly wear you down. And if Firth slowed the pace, Brosnan's next challenge was the complete opposite, working with a whirlwind of unstoppable energy. In 1993, before Pierce Brosnan ever wore the tuxedo of James Bond, he stepped into one of his most memorable early Hollywood roles, Stu Dunmire, the charming new boyfriend in the family classic Mrs. Doubtfire. The film was headlined by Robin Williams, and for Brosnan, working alongside him was like stepping into a storm. Williams wasn't just acting, he was a force of nature. Every take was different. Every pause in filming became a chance for him to launch into wild improvisations, voices and impressions. Cast and crew were often doubled over in laughter. But while it was dazzling for the audience and electric on screen, for Brosnan, it was overwhelming. He came from a background of control and discipline, rehearsed lines, clean delivery, smooth timing. Suddenly, all that structure was being swept aside by Williams' unpredictability. One crew member recalled seeing Brosnan sitting quietly during a break, reviewing his script while Williams bounded over, firing off an impromptu comedy routine. Everyone howled with laughter. Brosnan smiled politely, then, when Robin darted away again, muttered with a wry grin. It's like living inside a hurricane. It wasn't resentment. In truth, Brosnan admired Williams deeply, but keeping up with his manic brilliance wasn't easy. Scenes stretched longer than expected. Lines were constantly shifting, and for someone who thrived on efficiency, Brosnan often had to swallow his frustration. Yet, over time, something shifted. Instead of resisting, he began adapting. He learned to ride the chaos, letting Robin's energy carry him rather than fighting against it. The result was magic. Their dynamic worked perfectly. Brosnan's steady composure against Williams' whirlwind. It gave Mrs. Doubtfire the balance it needed. One man grounded, the other gloriously unhinged. For Brosnan, though, the experience was unforgettable. Brilliant, exhausting, and humbling. Proof that even the most disciplined actors have to bend when genius storms onto the set. But while Robin left him drained, the next clash came from someone very different. A newcomer whose icy precision tested Brosnan's patience in an entirely new way. By 2002, Pierce Brosnan was Bond. No questions asked. With 3 films behind him, he had perfected the role. Confident, efficient, and in total command. But when Die Another Day introduced a fresh new face, Rosamund Pike, making her feature film debut, Brosnan found himself dealing with a very different kind of challenge. Pike, straight out of Oxford, was fiercely intelligent and uncompromising in her approach. She dissected her role as Miranda Frost with academic precision. Every line was questioned, every scene analyzed, every motivation broken down until it fit her exact vision of the character. While Brosnan leaned on instinct and experience to move quickly through scenes, Pike slowed everything down. Crew members noticed the contrast immediately. Brosnan would often be ready in full costume, standing off to the side, arms folded, while Pike pressed the director for another rehearsal or a subtle shift in line delivery. The delays became so common that one crew member joked Brosnan looked like he was about to order a martini just to pass the time. In a rare moment of exasperation, he muttered under his breath, "The Ice Queen isn't just in character. She's in the entire production." Still, Brosnan never let frustration boil over. He remained polite and professional, even as his patience was tested. Pike, for her part, was never disrespectful, just insistent. She wanted to prove herself, and she did. The irony was that their natural disconnect enhanced their performances. The chilly tension between Bond and Miranda Frost felt authentic, because in many ways, it was. Years later, Brosnan admitted Pike was one of the smartest, most dedicated actors he'd ever worked with. But during filming, her meticulous style was both impressive and exhausting. And if Rosamund's precision pushed his patience, his next co-star drove him up the wall for a completely different reason: her chronic lateness. In 1997, Pierce Brosnan returned as James Bond in Tomorrow Never Dies, following up the massive success of GoldenEye. The stakes were high. Bond was back in full swing, and Brosnan was riding a wave of global fame. His co-star this time was Teri Hatcher, then one of television's biggest names thanks to Lois and Clark, The New Adventures of Superman. On screen, they played former lovers caught in a dangerous web of espionage. Off-screen, though, the chemistry wasn't nearly as smooth. From the very beginning of production, problems arose. Hatcher developed a reputation for arriving late to set, sometimes significantly so. For Brosnan, a man known for punctuality and professionalism, this became a recurring sore point. Standing in full tuxedo under bright studio lights, waiting for his co-star, tested not only his patience, but the entire production schedule. At the time, rumors swirled about why Hatcher was constantly delayed. Some whispered diva behavior, others suggested disorganization. What wasn't widely known until later was that Hatcher was in the early stages of pregnancy during filming, a difficult period that came with real challenges. But that context wasn't always communicated, and for Brosnan, the delays felt avoidable and, at times, disrespectful. In his typically diplomatic fashion, Brosnan never publicly slammed Hatcher. Yet, in later interviews, he admitted working with her wasn't the best experience. Insiders say his frustration was clear. He wanted the shoot to run smoothly, and the repeated waiting around left him irritated. Still, he kept it professional, maintaining the illusion of romantic spark on screen, even when, off-screen, the bond wasn't there. The irony? Their on-screen pairing worked. Audiences saw passion and tension, never suspecting the real friction simmering beneath. Tomorrow Never Dies became a box office hit, but for Brosnan, it was a professional triumph shadowed by personal frustration. 7 actors, 7 clashes. Some subtle, some draining, some unforgettable. But what does it all say about Brosnan himself? Across his long and celebrated career, Pierce Brosnan stood tall as one of Hollywood's most iconic leading men. But even James Bond wasn't immune to the frustrations, rivalries, and insecurities that come with working alongside some of the biggest names in the industry. With Halle, he wrestled with the sting of being overshadowed. With Sean Bean, he endured the draining intensity of method acting. Meryl Streep left him quietly questioning his own abilities, while Colin Firth's meticulous nature clashed with his instinctive flow. Robin Williams overwhelmed him with pure chaos and genius. Rosamund Pike tested his patience with icy precision, and Teri Hatcher strained his discipline with repeated delays. 7 actors, 7 challenges. And yet, through each of these clashes, Brosnan remained the consummate professional, never exploding, never derailing a production, always pushing through. In many ways, That quiet resilience is what defined him, both as James Bond and beyond. What these stories reveal is something powerful. Behind the tuxedo and charm, Brosnan wasn't just Bond. He was human. He had doubts. He had frustrations. And he carried those scars from set to set, quietly learning, adapting, and proving himself time and again. For fans, it's a reminder that the Hollywood magic we see on screen often masks the messy human realities behind the camera. Even legends face clashes that test their patience and confidence. So now, the question is yours. Which of these feuds surprised you the most? Was it Brosnan's quiet irritation with Halle Berry, his stormy ride alongside Robin Williams, or his tension with Teri Hatcher? Let us know in the comments below. And if you enjoyed uncovering this side of Pierce Brosnan, don't forget to like this video, share it with your friends, and subscribe for more untold stories from Hollywood's golden archives. Because sometimes, the most shocking secrets aren't in the films. They're in the people who made them.